of people absorbing the arguments of opponents who do not wish you well. So, for instance, on interventionism, you never hear, in fact, I've said this to Majid before, but I've never heard anyone from the Islamic world say, thank God for NATO.
Yeah.
But they should.
But by the way, I spend the rest of my book debunking these, just for everyone's,
but I mean, they shouldn't. The reason I mention this is for the selective historical reasons which we in the West are at risk of imbibing. For instance, I say, why does nobody say thank God for NATO? Because if NATO hadn't have intervened in Kosovo, I think it's widely agreed that a severe genocide would have occurred on the continent of Europe, worse than was already happening. NATO intervened. We don't expect thank yous endlessly, but once will be something. And
thank you, Douglas.
So I have. It's not enough. But this is just worth remembering, because a generation and a lot of people from a generation are at risk of imbibing basically the jihadists' arguments about us. And I just put that out there at the beginning. The second thing I'd just say quickly is, I mean, the fascinating thing now about looking at back, for instance, intervention in Afghanistan, is that, it's one of the great fallacies of history which we're always vulnerable to, which is to think that everyone knew in the past what we know now. And, until the 1980s, the major threat to countries like ours was global communism, the Soviet expansionism. We saw it as a major threat, and anyone who doubts that just has to say that, I mean, if up until, I've often thought of this, until as late as basically the 10th of September 2001, if you said, in the early years of the 21st century, politicians, journalists, public intellectuals and others are going to spend years talking about Islam. Say, what? Why? How come? It's not that interesting. It's not that vital in our societies. It's a bit of our societies. It's not overwhelming. If you said, okay, you're going to be discussing Islamic blasphemy laws all across Scandinavia for years. Why?
And the jurisprudence of face veils.
Yeah, and you're going to be the major debate in the UK in August 2018 is going to be the burqa. How does that happen? I don't see I don't see the way.
That is a bit surreal, isn't it?
So here's the deep underlying thing, which is that religion's back, and most people in the West don't know how to talk about it or think about it. And I've just got this endless concern about this matter, because I've had this conversation, as I think a lot of other people here have, for years with politicians and others, and they still don't understand the nature of this. And I just give you one example quickly. A little while ago, I was speaking to a TV producer who came over to me at a party somewhere and said, it was at the height of ISIS, and she said, what do ISIS want, Douglas? And I thought, oh, okay. Well,
they're actually quite upfront about it generally.
Yeah, they're quite. They've done a lot of speaking about this and a lot of writing, and they basically want to bring about they invite the world to Islam and bring about the end times. And this woman looked at me and she said, she said, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, they can't. I said, what do they really want? And I said, well, they say that they want to invite the world to Islam, or their version of Islam, and then bring about the end of times. And she just looked at me like, I don't see that. I don't. So, and then I realized, well, if I just said to her, basically what ISIS are after is like a 2.5% reduction in VAT, she'd have been all over it. Oh, yeah. Oh, I see. Well, would they settle for 1.2? We'd have been able to talk about it.
It is a bit high, isn't it?
Let's find some compromise. But she had no idea. And that for me, in a nutshell, is one of the things, one of the many things we're walking through at the moment, is the inability of people in societies like ours to realize.
What Douglas is describing here is just so right on point. I mean, that was so funny there that he said this lady, journalist, is asking him, what does ISIS, what does Al-Qaeda, what do the Islamists want? And he's telling her, this is what they want. They're not hiding it. They want to establish a new kingdom of God on here, caliphate or whatever you want to call it. That's a literal translation. And they want everyone to basically become under the Islamic, ruling Islamic empire. And that's pretty much it. And then obviously whatever else that they're, in terms of their demands. And people just go, because they just don't have they don't have a freaking clue, because they're thinking in terms of, I guess, beings that are rational, like, okay, here's some terms, here's some things that we want. Maybe we'll compromise, just like you said. If he would have talked about the tax plan that the ISIS wants, or they don't like the VAT tax, or they don't like this, and can we negotiate? That just registers with people. Go, oh, okay, all right, sure. Oh, you don't like the policy? Oh, maybe you don't like the fact that women are supposed to wear these. Okay, we can modify this. We can modify that. That's what that level of thinking is, because they can't comprehend anything outside of that to say the end of times. They want to put one, blanket theocracy across the entire globe. That's just crazy. Nobody would want that. That's just crazy people talking. And here's another thing. You'd think that they were talking about that. Would we be talking about Islam? Would we be talking about the burqa or anything? How about this for something in this century? If somebody were to tell you that we would be saying about climate change, that human beings, it's carbon dioxide, that we've got to get rid of airplanes, we've got to get rid of gas-powered cars, we've got to let boys go into women's bathrooms, that men can become women and women can become men, and that men will be competing in women's sports. If somebody would have said that, 10, 15 years ago, they would have said, come on, are you crazy? Yeah, right. We're going to let men go into women's bathrooms. Come on, bloke. You must be off your rocker. You've had too many points, as they say. I don't know if they say that or not, but I just thought that was my British kick-in. But this is the stuff that's going on here, folks. There's so much stuff that's changing in society, whether it's cultural norms or religious viewpoints. In terms of the eco-terrorism that's going on, all kinds of things. Anyways, this is what we're bringing to you, folks. So this is what's on tap for you today. We've got Douglas Murray giving some of his brilliant responses to questions that were being asked, along with the others there as well, with the Weinsteins and Majid Nawaz. And you're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir, where I give you my political prescription from my political perspective of what happens when Douglas Murray collides with these other great thinkers, collides with what? Social media, with biology, religion, government, policies, culture, all kinds of things, and they just come crashing together. Let's get back to more Douglas Murray right now.
A commentator on the TV in London a couple of mornings ago arguing about Trump and so on, as usual, not very enlightening discussion. She's arguing with Piers Morgan and she says, you keep on saying I'm some supporter of Barack Obama. I mean, I'm a communist. She said, I'm literally a communist. Right. And thought, if this girl had said, you should be more careful, I'm literally a fascist, Yeah. Yeah. By the way, edit that one carefully on that. No, I'm alive to YouTube.
That would be the New York Times headline.
Yeah, exactly. Literal fascist admits. But if this guy, everyone is busy searching around. Like in Canada, one of the big discussion forums, the Human Rights Commissions found that there were 11 people on this neo-Nazi forum, and it turned out half of them were working for the Canadian government trying to find neo-Nazis. Right. The Canadian government constituted 50% of the neo-Nazis in Canada. So they're scurrying around looking for the Nazis like this, and on the other side, it's like mainstream on the television, yeah, I'm a communist, I'd love to.
Because obviously this is a subject which is a more considerable landmine than many others as an issue. I think that one of the most important ground rules is this. You have to say, stop equating speech and violence. Stop saying, in all of this stuff, we need to find a way to think out loud. Okay? in a group like you're describing, or any other group, we have to find a way to think out loud and to try stuff out. Sometimes it will be wrong, often it'll be right, and so on, but we have to be able to have that ability. And one of the things that's stopping it is this endless equation of a thought that you've had and have voiced with the most extreme act of violence. So, for instance, if you say X, it's people like you that are the reason why so many of these people are killing themselves. You can't have any conversation if a part of the answer is being presented in that way. And I suppose just to see the people who are doing that as just using another tactic in order to win a particular sectional point. But allowing words to be words again is the beginning of some kind of solution. You know, it's a dialogue of the demented at the moment where the society says, you know, there are some things we really strongly believe in, and if you don't believe in them, well, please do. It's not very assertively made. There's a sort of, well, what happens if I don't? Well, please do. There's no follow-up. There's a long way for this to run, and it doesn't all go in a good direction. The enormous risk that often happens speaking to the world. I mean, it is impossible to find a manner of speaking which could simultaneously be you and a few people in a room, you and the people at your dinner, and possibly everyone in the world. It's jokes are the most obvious one. There is no joke so funny that it can be repeated to everybody in the world all the time.
Forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
And and we all know most jokes have some edge somewhere. Most of them are not going to last 5 years, let alone et cetera, et cetera. So jokes are the obvious one. The other one is, and I was very worried by what Sam said about that, about the same self-censorship, or not self-censorship, but that thing of stepping back slightly, because what is the problem for politics in all of our countries at the moment? What has produced this backlash in politics? It's that we've had a generation of politicians who can never say anything meaningful in front of people. I mean, I spend a certain amount of my life on shows with politicians, and I know, and Majid knows, that basically you see it in their eyes.
Yeah.
The aim is to survive the next half hour without plausibly or otherwise being accused of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, or something else. And you can see it in the other politicians. There's no meaningful win. The hope is that the other person says something which allows you to say, I think that's quite offensive to X group of people. And then the person goes, oh no. And then they're on the ropes and you got them. And if you get enough other people, you destroy them and they're dead. And that's it. And the point is that this is why politicians can't say anything. This could be
your effect on these politicians. But,
yeah, it may be. But the point is that this is why politics is going bad, because you can't tell any truth to that kind of audience. Now, the problem is, if down from politicians, or up from politicians maybe, you have the same effect.
Douglas Murray, once again, smacking the nail with the proverbial hammer right on the freaking head. Just to go over a few things. Look, you may not agree with Douglas on all, whenever he speaks on every single issue that he talks about. I don't agree with every single thing that Douglas Murray espouses. I mean, there are some things that we've got, and that's a whole different, video. But I would say 95, 96% of things, absolutely. When he was talking about the fact that nowadays, when you talk and you open up your mouth, the other side, the left, the liberals, the progressives, the Marxists, the socialists, the communists, academia, the alphabet networks, you name it, Democrats, liberals, all of them. As soon as you open up your mouth to any of the groups, the cult of science, the cult of climatology that I call, or the Church of Transgenderism, or even the Church of Climatology, as soon as you utter a single word, they say, oh, but you know what? What you just said, it's killing a lot of people. And on the other side, if you don't speak out against what I just said, that's violence too, because silence is violence. And words are violence. And that's the new R word, folks. That's the new B word. Remember I talk about the political deck of cards? They've got 52 cards in there they can play, more than that probably. But what did they use before? Take out the R card, call you a racist. Oh, that didn't work? Let's double down. Two of a kind. Throw out the B card, bigot. You're a bigot. You're prejudiced. You're homophobic. The H card. Islamophobe, the I card. Transphobe, the T card. Double down, five of a kind. Phobe. And that's exactly what they used to do. And now, since those things aren't working, now they're basically saying, oh, if you say that, you're committing violence against people. They're going out committing suicide. You're the one that's their blood is on their hands. Has no basis in fact, has no merit whatsoever at all. Completely made up, complete bullshit lies. But for some people, it will stop them because they're just, wait a minute, I'm not killing people. I'm not causing people to commit suicide. What are you talking about? But it does shut down conversation. The same thing as silence with violence. I mean, those are just the plain fact that that's what the other side is using to silence the voices from the conservative side, from the right side. That's exactly what's going on. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already and you like the content, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We'd love for you to do that. You all know what to do. Share, like, and follow us. In the meantime, check out our other links. They're here and below. My final thought is always, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.